what does it mean to call upon the name of the Lord? In Romans 10, what does it mean to be saved? The salvation in Romans 10 is pretty well defined for us in verses in chapter 9. It refers to Israel's temporal deliverance from national catastrophe. So if the nation will call upon the Lord for help, he'll deliver them from 70 AD, the catastrophe that's coming down about 40 years later. And of course, for an individual within the nation who calls upon the Lord, that phrase is clearly defined in the Old Testament. Anybody can look this up in a concordance, look up that phrase throughout the Old Testament. It never has any connection with calling upon the Lord for salvation from hell. It always means to call upon him for help. In some passages, it simply means to worship the Lord. Furthermore, this is something only a believer can do. Therefore, it could have nothing to do with personal salvation from eternal hell. That's proved in verse 14. How then shall we call upon him whom they've not believed? In other words, you can't call upon him if you haven't already believed. So this is addressed to true believers. And how shall you believe in him you've not heard? Well, you can't believe unless you hear. So they've heard. And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent? So there's a sequence, there's a chronological sequence there. And it starts with the preacher being sent, then he giving the message, and then people believing it. And then after they believe it, then they can call upon the Lord. So this is something only believers in Christ can do. And that's the same way it's used throughout the Old Testament.
That's good.
Therefore, it has nothing to do with calling upon him for personal salvation from damnation.